Bienvenue tout le monde. Ça serait un webinaire, un teach-in, primairement en anglais parce que Benoît a fait la même présentation le mois de novembre en français. Alors, ça serait le tour de l'occasion de le faire en anglais pour cette fois. Mais gênez-vous pas si vous avez des questions dans la séance de questions. Vous pouvez poser vos questions en anglais ou en français, peu importe. Et on va répondre dans la langue de votre choix. But just for fun, we're going to do the presentation in English this time because Benoit wants to try it out in English. He made a translation of all his slides, so that's fantastic. Confirm your speaking language. So, yeah, when I started to speak in French, it popped up and said, confirm your speaking language. Okay, so
All right.
So should we, yeah.
Yeah, I think we can get started. Thank you, Kim.
Okay, okay. So I'll just share my screen. Can everybody see my screen okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, wonderful. So welcome again. This is the presentation. This will be an hour and a half. It's a presentation of Get the Case Out of Genocide with Benoit Allard. It's a 90-minute teach-in. It will be recorded. It will be in English with French subtitles. And tech support is provided by Greta Zaro, who's the Global Organizing Director for World Beyond War. So take this opportunity to say thank you, Greta, for all your help and for being the tech person for this. And that picture you see there is from the encampment in front of the Caisse, dépôt and placement de Québec this summer in Montreal. So I'm going to do some introductions. Benoit's going to do his presentation, which is about 30 minutes, and we'll have a Q&A for about 30 minutes. And maybe if there's time, we'll have a next step. So closing, there will also be a follow-up email. So don't worry if you miss anything, we'll follow up with links and everything as well. And I want to point out that the arms data used in this campaign was provided by Just Peace Advocates. They did all the research. So I'm their moderator. My name is Kim Gomery. I'm the coordinator of Montreal for World Beyond War, which is a chapter of World Beyond War, a global citizens movement to abolish war. And the Montreal chapter was founded in November of 2021. And your presenter is Benoit Allard from the Collectif Désinvestir pour la Palestine. So it's a coalition of citizens and groups involved in the Palestinian struggle in Tiohtià, Mooniyang, Montreal. And in June 2024, that was the beginnings of a campaign to get the CDPQ to withdraw its $14.2 billion in holdings in over 80 companies complicit in the occupation and genocide in Palestine. So over to you, Benoit.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Okay. Ooh. So thank you for being here. I'm Benoit Allard. Glad to be here with you tonight. As Simri said, English is not my first language, so this is the first time I'm doing this presentation in English. I have a few of those coming up, so I was well, you're my test group, so I hope this goes well. But as I said, as was said, I will be taking questions and answer questions in both language. So don't worry if there's anything you want to ask. I can do those both in French and English. So my presentation today is going to be titled Broadening the Fight for Divestment, and more precisely, how do we get the Caisse de dépôt out of the genocide in Palestine? So before talking about the Caisse de dépôt, I want to share a bit of perspective about this issue. So I guess if you're here, like me, you've been seeing in over the last year, that kind of articles, that kind of news about the bombings, about the tragedy, the genocide that is going out right now in Gaza and in Palestine. So I want to talk about it because when you see that, it gets me to feel a lot of urgency. There's an emergency that has been lasting for over a year, and I think it's important to acknowledge that feeling because it can get us to act. Emergency, the feeling of this urgency is a motivator for action, but it can also blind us or restrict our perspective to the bombs, to the deaths, to the destruction in Gaza. What I want to talk about is what is behind the bombs. The genocide that is going on in Palestine is not only enabled by weapons, it's enabled by a whole structure. And when we look at that structure, we can see other means of actions. So behind the bomb, there is a lot of equipment. There are non-military equipment. There are the bulldozer being used to destroy homes in the Palestinian occupied territories. There are the railways that carry settlers to illegal colonies. There are the surveillance equipment. And all of that is only possible because there are institutions backing the occupation by the Israeli state of the Palestinian territories, of the Palestinian land, of the Palestinian people. So institutions such as banks, such as governments, such as international institutions, all of those are creating the conditions that allow the genocide to happen. So there's a whole structure. So as you see, the bombs are not the only problem. And when we look at the images from Gaza, we ask ourselves, how do we stop the bombs from where from an ocean afar, like when we're in Quebec, where we are in Canada? Well, when we look at the structure, we can see links between where we stand and the ongoing assault against Gaza. There are pillars of this whole structure that relate to us. And in those pillars, there are cracks. And what I want to talk about is about one such pillar and how we get to exploit those weaknesses in the structure to make, hopefully, one pillar collapse. And making that pillar collapse won't end the structure, but it creates other opportunities for attacking the structure. So what we're talking about is not only about the bombs, it's about attacking the institutions that make the bombing possible. And which institution is making that bombing possible? Well, let's talk about the Caisse de dépôt et placement du Québec. The Caisse de dépôt et placement du Québec is what we call an institutional investor. It's a state company that is managing public funds from depositors with our various institutions based in Quebec. Together, those depositors give the Caisse de dépôt over $400 billion in assets. That's a lot of money. That makes the Caisse de dépôt the second largest pension fund in Canada. It also makes it one of the top 100 public investors in the world. So we're talking about an international player that is currently managing the money of 6 million people in Quebec. How does that work? So the depositors I talk about are the Caisse clients. So the Caisse de dépôt isn't collecting the funds itself. It's deposited by other funds, such as the Quebec Pension Plan Fund, the Fonds de la Santé et de la Sécurité au Travail, the public automobile insurance, and also a lot of pension funds, such as the Government and Public Employees Retirement Plan, the REGOP, and a whole lot others. So what happens is the people in Quebec, they contribute to the funds of those depositors. For example, if you're working in Quebec, you probably you must contribute to the Régie des rentes du Québec, the CNESST. If you own a car, you're going to pay money to the Société d'assurance automobile. And all those funds, those institutions, they put it in the hands of the Caisse de dépôt, which invests this money and then redistributes the profits of those investments to its depositors, which then give it back to the population, the people in Quebec, through pension money or insurance. So when we're talking about the billions of the Caisse de dépôt, we're talking about our money. Well, what is the Caisse de dépôt doing with that money? It's investing it in a lot of companies. But as of the year 2023, we saw that $14.2 billion of that money is being invested in 86 companies, which are complicit of violation of international law, of war crimes, and genocide against the Palestinian people. There are 86 of them. If I was talking about all of those, we would be here until tomorrow morning. So I'm going to talk about 5 of those. First, we have WSP Global, which is a company, an engineering company that is based in Montreal. Currently, this company is overseeing the expansion of the Jerusalem Light Rail to illegal Israeli settlements in the East Jerusalem, which is contrary to international law. The Caisse de dépôt holds $4.2 billion in assets in that company. It's the main investor of that company, which is based in Montreal, by the way. Another company is Alstom. Maybe you haven't heard about Alstom. You've heard about Bombardier. Bombardier Transport has been bought by Alstom. They are building trains, locomotives, and also railways. And one such railway project is the Jerusalem Light Rail project that I talked earlier, which is being oversaw by Alstom, by WSP. But there's also the Tel Aviv-Jerusalem Railway project that is currently cutting through Palestinian territory, illegally annexed Palestinian territory, which is also, again, in violation of international law. The Caisse de dépôt is a major investor in Alstom. It holds $1.2 billion in assets in that company. So let's talk about something else than trains. We're going to talk about heavy machinery that is used to build those infrastructure, but also to destroy Palestinian homes, Palestinian village. And one such provider of equipment is Caterpillar. Caterpillar is famous for providing heavy machinery to the Israeli army, which is used against the Palestinian people to destroy tens of thousands of homes in Palestinian occupied territory, but also to conduct extrajudiciary executions against Palestinian people, destroying homes while Palestinians are still trapped inside. And also this equipment is being modified by the Israeli army to be used for military purpose and has been involved in various war crimes, such as burying alive wounded Palestinians near the Kamal Adwan hospital in Gaza as of December 2023. The Caisse de dépôt holds $77 million in assets in Caterpillar. Now let's talk about weapons. Lockheed Martin, biggest arms manufacturer in the world. I think from now you understand where I'm going to. So Lockheed Martin is providing 3 out of 4 warplanes being used to bomb the people in Gaza as we're speaking. It's supplying a lot of weapons to the Israel military, and the Caisse de dépôt holds $62 million in that company. I've talked about the plane. Let's talk a bit about the bomb. What you're looking at is a MK-80 bomb. Those bombs, they can weigh up to 2,000 pounds, 900 kilograms. And they are so big, so powerful that they can kill and wound people up to a kilometer from the point of impact. Just take a moment to process this, to imagine the destruction one such weapon carries with it. And they are being routinely used against the population in Gaza to bomb schools, to bomb hospitals, to bomb houses. And the Israel military currently received, as of October 7th, since October 7th, it has been provided with 14,000 of those bombs, at the very least. Those bombs are manufactured by a company called General Dynamics, which has factories here in Repentigny and also in Valleyfield. The Caisse de dépôt holds $2.9 million in assets in that company. So every time those bombs are being used against the people in Gaza, General Dynamics makes profit out of it. The Caisse de dépôt makes profit out of it. And through the Caisse de dépôt, we all make profit out of it. What's happening is that through the Caisse de dépôt, we are receiving dividends from a genocide. This is why this has to stop. So let's talk about the objectives. What the objective we have been carrying as the Divest for Palestine Collective, and as more and more people are joining on campaign. What we want to do is to increase the pressure on the Caisse de dépôt until it is forced to, one, seize immediately all investments in companies that are complicit in the occupation and genocide in Palestine. So far, we've listed 86 of those. But this is not the only thing we want the Caisse to do. We want the Caisse to establish a transparent monitoring process to ensure that none of its future investments are being made in companies that are complicit with violations of human rights, violations of international law, and genocide anywhere in the world. This should be an evidence. But for the Caisse de dépôt, apparently it is not. So how do we get the Caisse to divest? Well, we have to face a few obstacles. First one being the Caisse de dépôt. So the Caisse de dépôt won't change by itself. It has a lot of resources. It's really resistant to change from within. So we know that it suppresses the dissenting voice within its employees. It maintains a veil of opacity when asked about its investment, because it relies on the fact that it has a lot of funds, a lot of influence, and also its expertise is well recognized among the society, but among other investment funds. The irony, in fact, is that the Caisse enjoy quite a positive image on the investing scene. It is seen as one of the world's leader in ethical investment. Their words, not mine. So we have a lot of work to do to dismantle that image. So if the Caisse is not moving on its own, it needs to be challenged by a social movement. And so far, the mobilization we've seen for the Palestinian people in Montreal and across the world has been remarkable, of a degree that we haven't seen in many years. But there have been challenges too. So coordination between the various groups has been complicated. There are a lot of complicit institutions in this genocide. There are a lot of targets, and it's hard to coordinate our efforts and also to maintain energies, because it's been more than a year since the genocidal campaign of the Israeli army started in Gaza. This can lead to exhaustion. And there's also a challenge to maintain that mobilization on the long term. What happens when there's a ceasefire? What happens when people may feel that the emergency is less present? So those are challenges that we have to face and to find answers to. But also the fact that we need fighting the Caisse de dépôt on the financial side needs to challenge also its expertise. So we need resources, we need knowledge, and also we need to raise the public awareness about those investments. And as you have seen, the media coverage so far of the Palestinian mobilization, the mobilization in support of Palestine, well, that coverage hasn't been, let's say, optimal. But we have a few advantages. So not to be demoralizing, and what we've seen so far as organizing on this issue is that, first of all, the Caisse de dépôt is, well, the polite way is to say doing a lot of double talk, but the less polite way is saying a lot of bullshit. Because when the Caisse de dépôt is saying that it's the leader of ethical investment while funding companies that are manufacturing weapons being used to kill families, well, it doesn't take a lot of scrutiny to observe that this is not coherent. Like, this is double talk, this is investment bullshit. So this is useful. Like, we can show they are contradicting themselves. Also, we know that they can divest because they've done it in the past. They divested from fossil fuel exploitation, they divested from tobacco industry, and they also divested from a company, Policity, which was involved in violations of human rights in Israeli prisons against Palestinian prisoners. Also, the reputation of the Caisse de dépôt is a strength, but it's also a weakness, because if the public attention is brought to those violations, those investments we're talking about, well, the Caisse de dépôt may lose its reputation. And also, one advantage we have when talking to the Caisse de dépôt, other than other institutional investors or other private investors, is that the Caisse de dépôt has some accountability. It's investing our money, and it has to report on those investments. So we know a lot more about the Caisse de dépôt, not a lot more, but at least more about the investments, the activities of the Caisse de dépôt, because it has some degree of transparency that other investors, private investors, do not have to comply with. Also, we have the international law on our side. There are a lot of people being mobilized. There are a lot of creativity and diversity in the tactics being used against the Caisse de dépôt and in the Palestinian movement as a whole. And I think if we're here more than a year after the start of this genocide, of this genocidal assault, well, I think there's a lot of willingness from the people leading this movement of solidarity to continue the fight until the occupation ends, until the genocide ends, and until Palestine is free. So, what do we do now? That's a big question. So far, how I invite people to think about it is, when we're talking about a strategy concerning such a huge target, the Caisse de dépôt, it can be attacked on many fronts. So in order to reflect, to fuel reflection and discussion on what we should do, here's a few suggestions of things that could be done to increase that pressure on the Caisse de dépôt until it divests. But before that, I want to talk a bit about strategy. So when we talk about strategy, often people think about tactics first. But the strategy is, just to get an idea, is a set of actions. It's a game plan, in fact. So it's the great plan as a whole. So it's the idea of what actions, a set of actions that we should do over time in a defined order, so we achieve a specific objective. So this is what I'm interested to, I think it's interesting to think about, is what is the strategy to get the Caisse de dépôt to divest? This is different from tactics. Tactics are the elements of a strategy, but they are not the strategy in and out of itself. So tactics are demonstration, petition, training workshop, open letter, but tactics in and out of themselves don't have meaning if we don't think them in a logic sequence. So you can do a petition every week, but it may not get a lot of impact because it's like it gets repetitive and people get bored and it doesn't achieve its goal. But if you do a petition, then a protest, and then other means of action, then you can build out of each tactic. So keep that in mind as I'm talking about those axes. So for us, a way to organize those tactics is to think about access. So to get the Caisse de dépôt to divest, first of all, there's visibility. So we need to get the public, to make the public aware of what's happening with their money. So this can be done in a lot of ways, such as a website, press conference, with informational material, with action, disruption, even advertising campaign. I'm not saying this is what should be done, but these are all things that could be done as a way to increase visibility. Mobilization. I think if we want to get the Caisse to divest, we need to mobilize different sectors of civil society that can put pressure on the Caisse de dépôt. I'm talking about people in the unions. I'm talking about people who can donate money, time, expertise, people who know how the Caisse de dépôt is working and that can lend that expertise to help organize our strategy. It's also people from within the Caisse de dépôt who knows what's going on behind closed doors and that can put pressure on certain actors who have power. And finally, this is where I'm coming to, the targeted pressure against individuals within the Caisse de dépôt, the Quebec government, and also depositors. As I said, the Caisse de dépôt is a collection of individual investments from big depositors. So those depositors, they have more power in what the Caisse de dépôt is doing than any individual citizen. So if we're able to influence those investors, to put pressure on those depositors, they can then put pressure on the Caisse de dépôt. And there's a lot of more, we can think there's a lot, it's going to be, there's more chances that the Caisse de dépôt will actually listen to its clients than to like public society organizations such as me, you, or any collective. So here's a few depositors that could be influenced, but we may talk a bit more about those. There's been a bit of work going on a few of these depositors. But since time flies, I think I'm gonna end soon here. I've been talking a lot, and well, English is exhausting, so
You're doing great.
so I'm just gonna end on these conclusions. For discussion, what I'm proposing is that we can think about a lot of things to do, things that could be done, things that in the best worlds possible we could do. So we could think about lawsuits and dozens of lawsuits and the public advertising campaigns and getting all the unions and all the public society actors to gather behind us and to put pressure on the Caisse de dépôt. But the thing is, this is not the world we're standing in. So what I think is the most useful when we think about that struggle, that strategy, is to think about building from where we stand, not from where other people stand. What can we do? What are our resources? What are our expertise? What can we contribute that could be useful to a campaign against the Caisse de dépôt? And what resources are we lacking that we can secure from other organizations we have some ties with? How can we get those? And how could these resources be used to the best effect to put pressure on the Caisse de dépôt? So this is the work we've been doing at Divest for Palestine. This is the work we are continuing to do, because I feel that here in Quebec, we have a responsibility, us in the Western world. We are the people from where the money comes from. Israel cannot sustain a genocide on its own. It can only do it because there are investors here in the West which are doing it. The Caisse de dépôt is a huge investor. And we are the people who are best positioned to get it for that, to divest. So what I want to say, what I want to say to you, the invitation I want to share with you is to find a way, if you can, and get involved in that fight, and to how to put those skills, those resources we have to the best effect. So I don't know, because I believe, and those are be my last words, I promise, I believe this is a struggle that not only we can win, but we will win. I don't know how long it will take, but the Caisse de dépôt will divest at some point. And the more efforts we're putting in it, the closer we get to that moment. That moment where the Caisse de dépôt divest, when it sets a precedent that other investors will also divest from the genocide and occupation, and create the possibility where the Palestinian people can free themselves. Thank you.
Bravo. Thank you so much, Benoit. That was really inspiring and informative. I had forgotten, I attended the one in November, but I'd forgotten some of these things. So it's really very, very helpful. We will be sending around a follow-up, so don't worry with all these. And I think Greta put the links to the PowerPoint in the chat, right? Yeah. So
yes, and we can send those out in the email afterwards. But yeah, thank you so much, Benoit, for that presentation. It was really well done, and especially your first presentation in English. And I thought that you also really laid out, you know, from the organizer's perspective, the strategies and tactics that we can pursue. So I really appreciated that.